This is an introduction to writing a progress report, and it's intended to be a supplement to what you are already reading in your textbook. It follows a lot of the basic format that you find in the textbook as far as talking about the different elements of a progress report and that kind of thing. What I'm doing here is trying to expand on that a little bit and provide some additional detail on what is expected to build out your progress report, prepare it for submission. So let's take a look. As you begin to think about preparing your progress report, one of the things that is unique about this project for this course is you're expanding on the proposal that you submitted for your last assignment, and you're assuming that it was accepted. And this is where you now have to apply some imagination. Okay, so your proposal was accepted, and now you've been asked to come back to those same people to provide a progress report on how it's going. You don't want to go back in and say, everything's great, thanks very much, see you later. For a number of reasons, that wouldn't be accepted in the business world, nor is it of much help for a course like this. And of course, you already know that. But so you want to think through, okay, what are some of the potential obstacles that I could face in putting this proposal together and this project together? What are some of the surprises that I might encounter, that kind of thing? So before you start working on this, kind of think through and create for yourself a scenario of what kinds of things might be occurring as you work toward this project. And I'll tell you that I did something very similar to this in graduate school in a course that required me to go back into my business and do some research and make a proposal and that kind of thing. It wasn't a proposal that was going to be seriously considered at my business, but I did use interviews and information I gathered in my business to prepare the proposal and write the report. That one was focused more on internal communication issues, since the graduate course was on business communication. However, in this case, there is no downside to, if you are doing something in an organization with which you are familiar, if your proposal is about that. I encourage you to talk to people who might have received your original proposal and ask them, so what are the kinds of issues that I might encounter here? What kinds of things do I need to be aware of? That sort of thing. So you're going to start with a quick update on how much of the proposed project is complete. And you want to provide enough detail to be helpful to the people to whom you're reporting. So you'll start with that. Where are you at as far as right now? What are you working on? What is in progress at the time of your progress report? So you're going to start with, okay, I've got X, Y, and Z is done, and now I'm working on A, B, and C. Again, think through before you start writing, before you start putting this together, the scenario that makes the most sense to you. And if it makes sense to talk to people in an organization similar to the one that we're discussing here, or if it is a proposal that is for an organization with which you are currently affiliated or familiar, I would have some conversations with those folks. And then, of course, you are going to say, okay, based on what is complete, what is in progress right now, here's what's left. So, and you might provide a timeline. So we're 4 months into the project, this is where I'm at currently, and this is going to take me another 10 days, and then I think I've got another 7 weeks left, whatever the case might be. Or you can break it into percentages. I'm 60% done. I expect, I've got 40% left. Here's how it's going to play out. That kind of information that would be A, easily digestible to your audience, and B, meaningful. It's got enough substance where the recipients of the information are going to get it. They're going to know, okay, I have a clear picture of where we're at in this process. It's always important, and here's where I want to talk about the need for honesty without throwing yourself or anyone else under the bus. So you want to talk about problems that you've encountered, obstacles that you hadn't anticipated or that you did anticipate and that were encountered. Sometimes these can be the sort of thing where you need cooperation of other people inside the organization, and either they have had other priorities or they haven't been able to cooperate enough to get something done. The other thing that quite frequently happens that you will want to address in any proposal is, did you get the buy-in, not just from the people to whom you're making the proposal, but from the people who need to assist you? Have they received the message that they're supposed to be a key part of making this happen? If you get to this point where you're doing your progress report and you have you've encountered issues like this, where whatever the case might be, again, I think it's important to combine honesty with some caution in how you report that. You're not going to do yourself any favors by, as I said, throwing someone under the bus and saying, I'd be all done with this except this department isn't helping me. There's got to be a different way to do that. And of course, the first thing you want to do is go to that department and say, hey, I'm not able to get this thing done. Can we talk about what's happening and how we can fix it, that sort of thing. Sometimes this process will uncover flaws in the basic structure of the proposal. There wasn't a prior authorization to get other people involved, and it turned out you needed it, and that's causing you problems. So those are the kinds of things, again, you want to think about as potential problems, and you may choose to create those for yourself and decide on how to address them in this progress report. So overall, you're going to provide, obviously, a general update. And as you do that, here are some things that I've experienced that I think can be helpful. Some of these are addressed in the textbook, some are not. Going back to what I just talked about, you want to be reassuring, you want to exude a sense of confidence, you want to give folks the idea that you've got this thing, but you don't want to pretend that everything is perfect if it's not. So there's a combination here of being comforting and forward-looking and confident while still being honest about issues you're running into. And here's the other key. If you have run into issues, if you have problems that either you didn't anticipate or that you did and they are impeding your progress, don't just complain about the problems, provide potential solutions. Even if the solutions aren't going to be implemented or there are other solutions that other people might come up with, at the very least, when you raise an issue, provide a potential solution to that issue as you make this report. In some cases, you may want to propose more than one solution. We could either do this or this or this, and it depends on, is there a budget, are people who need to be involved in this available, that kind of thing. I think it's always helpful to talk about, when I started this, here's what I anticipated, and I've learned some things that have changed my perspective a little bit, or that have reinforced what I thought What have you actually picked up as part of doing this project? What things have you learned as a result of the experience? This does a number of things. One, it creates a human perspective. The thing to always remember when we're talking about any kind of communication is that ultimately it is a way to convey information from one person to another person. So this is a human process and it involves people. And so providing perspectives and insights as a person having this experience rather than just, checking off items on a checklist is a good idea. You don't want to get too carried away with that. You don't want to get into stories about, side stories about things that happened that may or may not have created problems for you. There's a common sense here that you want to stay within, but always you want to be a person, a human being engaged in work that you want other people to care about. You may, at this point, need to update your timeline. Maybe you're ahead of schedule. Maybe you're behind schedule. Maybe you need to seek some adjustments to the timeline in one direction or another. So you want to go through this work schedule in some detail. You want to provide an update. So initially you may have thought that at this point you'd be 38% of the way through. That's too exacting, but you would be halfway through and you're only a quarter of the way through, and here's why. And here's what you intend to do about it, and here's a proposed adjustment to the timeline. So again, since this is a mythical project that you are creating, be a little creative. Use your imagination. Think about things that might come up and think about how you might address those. That's the exercise here, is to encounter potential problems and find solutions and find ways to communicate all of that to the right people. As I've talked about before, it's the rare project that is going to go precisely as you had expected. And so you can assume that something didn't quite go the way you wanted it. Maybe you got something done way faster than you thought, or maybe you learned something where your initial scope was either too broad or too narrow, and in putting the project together, it turns out that you can do more or you need to do less. All of that is part of talking about how the project might have changed or might need to change as you prepare this report. Then, if you think that changes are required, you can't assume that that's okay. You need to then, you're essentially going back and updating your initial proposal and getting reapproval for the pieces of it that are going to be different than what you initially proposed.